Brad Pitt gets confronted about his past. His epic clapback is everything. The lights of the studio glared down, bright and hot, bouncing off the glossy floor. The audience sat on the edge of their seats, phones poised to record. They weren't here for a friendly chat. They were here for drama. At center stage, Brad Pitt sat casually in the guest chair, legs crossed, hands resting on his lap, a calm, measured expression on his face. But across from him, Elliot Graves, a TV host known for his sharp-edged interviews, viral gotcha moments, and his obsession with exposing celebrity flaws. He didn't ask questions, he set traps. Elliot leaned forward, his perfectly tailored suit catching the studio lights, a smug grin playing at the corners of his mouth. "Brad," he started, voice smooth, "you've built this image of the laid-back, easygoing guy. But," he paused dramatically, "you've had, let's say, a complicated past. Divorce scandals, drinking issues, messy headlines. So let me ask," he glanced at the audience, milking the moment, "how much of that was the real you?" The room tensed. Brad didn't flinch. He let the question hang in the air, the weight of it stretching into the silence. Then he smiled, calm, patient. "You want to talk about the past?" he asked. "All right, let's talk." The crowd held its breath as Brad leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with Elliot. There was no tension in his posture, no flicker of irritation, just a calm, controlled presence that made the moment feel heavier. Elliot grinned wider, sensing an opportunity. "Look, Brad, I'm not here to dig up dirt for clicks," he lied, though everyone in the room knew better. "But people want transparency. You've been painted as the golden boy of Hollywood, but let's be real. Behind the charm, there's been chaos, multiple divorces, messy lawsuits, addiction rumors. People wonder, who is the real Brad Pitt?" The question hung in the air like a trap. The audience stirred, some whispering, others recording, waiting for Brad to stumble, to crack. But Brad didn't take the bait. Instead, he chuckled softly, rubbing his jaw as if considering the weight of the question. "You know," he began, "the funny thing about chaos is that it makes people uncomfortable. We like our heroes clean, flawless. But life?" he shrugged. "It's messy." Elliot pressed in, sensing the moment slipping. "But don't you think people deserve honesty? Don't you think they should know if their so-called heroes are flawed?" Brad's smile widened, though his eyes sharpened. "Oh, I'm not hiding my flaws, Elliot. I wear them like armor. You think I'm ashamed of my past? Of the mistakes I made? Hell no. I learned more from my darkest days than I ever did during the highlight reels." A soft murmur swept through the audience. The shift was subtle, but it was happening. Brad's tone deepened, gaining weight. "Here's the thing. People love a redemption arc in movies, but they hate it in real life. We want heroes to stay broken or perfect. Nothing in between. But I'm not here to fit into anyone's script. I'm not here to be the perfect Hollywood star." He leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper. "I'm here to be human." The room fell silent. Even Elliot hesitated, his cards suddenly feeling useless in his hands. But he wasn't done. Not yet. "Okay," Elliot countered, clearing his throat. "But some would argue that Hollywood lets its stars off too easy, that people like you get to mess up, bounce back, and still be loved. Regular folks don't get that kind of privilege." A bold move. Brad's eyes darkened, the first hint of heat flickering behind them. "You think this is about privilege?" Brad asked, voice steady but sharper now. "You think pain, loss, addiction, guilt, they check your bank account before hitting you? Nah, man. The difference is, when I fell, the whole damn world watched. Every mistake, every misstep, broadcast, judged, dissected. You think that's easy?" The crowd shifted, the weight of his words landing hard. "But here's what no one talks about," Brad continued. "What you do when you hit rock bottom. I clawed my way out, quietly. No press releases, no pity tours. I got sober. I made amends, and I kept going. That's what real life is, not the fall, but the climb back up." Elliot tried to speak, but the energy had changed. The audience was on Brad's side now. The camera lights glared hotter. Brad smirked. "So if you want a scandal, dig through the tabloids. But if you want the truth, he gestured to himself, it's sitting right here. The audience erupted, and Elliot, for the first time in the interview, he had nothing. Elliot shuffled his cue cards, a flicker of frustration flashing across his face. The crowd's energy had shifted entirely. They weren't here to watch Brad crumble anymore. They were rooting for him. Still, Elliot wasn't ready to throw in the towel. He leaned forward, his voice lower, trying to regain some control. But Brad, don't you think people hold you to a higher standard because of the influence you have? I mean, millions of people look up to you. Don't you feel the pressure to be, I don't know, better? Brad tilted his head, considering the question. The tension in the room was thick, the kind that made the audience inch closer to their screens. I get it, Brad said. When you're in the spotlight, people expect you to be perfect, to be some kind of role model 24/7. But here's the thing. I didn't sign up to be anyone's moral compass. I signed up to act, to tell stories. The real problem isn't me making mistakes. It's this idea that public figures can't be human. He paused, his eyes sweeping across the audience. Look around. Everyone in this room has skeletons in their closet. Bad days, regrets. But put a camera in front of someone, and suddenly people act like they're made of glass. A few audience members nodded. One woman murmured, "He's not wrong." But here's where it gets interesting, Brad continued. People love to drag you down when you fall, but they love a comeback even more. It's this twisted game of build 'em up, break 'em down, and see if they can crawl back. And guess what? He leaned in closer to Elliot, his voice a low growl. I crawled back. The audience erupted in applause. Elliot's polished facade cracked for a second, but he recovered quickly. All right, fair enough. But what about all the relationships you left in ruins? The broken friendships? The public feuds? Don't you think some people are still waiting for apologies? Brad's smile faded for the first time in the interview. A silence followed, a heavy one. I'm sure they are, he admitted. And you know what? I've reached out. I've made the calls that don't make headlines. I've apologized to people who didn't owe me forgiveness. Because real growth isn't about public displays of guilt. It's about private accountability. The room hushed. That's what people don't get about this industry, Brad continued. It's not about the apology post on Instagram or the press tour of redemption. It's about what happens off camera. Elliot had officially lost the upper hand. The crowd wasn't just clapping. They were cheering. Let me ask you something, Elliot, Brad said suddenly, flipping the script. You ever made a mistake that people didn't let you forget? Elliot blinked. Well, sure, but... Exactly, Brad cut in. Difference is, your mistakes don't end up on TMZ. That's the only privilege I've had stripped away. The crowd roared, and for the first time in the interview, Elliot looked rattled. He tried to shuffle to the next topic, but Brad was already standing up. The interview effectively over. Thanks for having me, Brad said, flashing that signature smirk. This was fun. The crowd stood up, giving him a standing ovation. And Elliot? He just sat there, his carefully laid plans crumbling around him. Because Brad didn't just survive the ambush, he owned it. As Brad walked off the set, the studio still buzzing with energy, Elliot sat there frozen, gripping his cue cards as if they could somehow save the sinking ship of the interview. The crowd hadn't just sided with Brad, they had turned on the very format of the gotcha interview itself. Backstage, producers were already scrambling, some frantically typing on their phones, others barking into earpieces. They could see the social media feeds exploding in real time. Brad Pitt Clapback was already trending. Clips of the interview, especially Brad's mic drop moments, were spreading like wildfire. Brad Pitt destroys TV host live on air. I crawled back. This moment gave me chills. He didn't dodge the past, he owned it. Respect. But it wasn't just Twitter. YouTube reaction videos popped up within the hour. TikTok edits of Brad's calm, unbothered responses hit millions of views. Even news anchors, usually obsessed with scandal, were praising the honesty of the moment. Yet not everyone was on Brad's side. Critics fired back hard. Classic Hollywood, romanticizing bad behavior. Why do we keep giving men like this redemption arcs? Brad's too smooth. He's been media trained to perfection. But the positive far outweighed the negative. Because here's what really caught people's attention. Brad didn't run from his past. He faced it. 2 days later, a clip of the interview hit 50 million views. People who didn't even care about Brad Pitt were chiming in. Fans, critics, people who saw themselves in the messy, complicated journey he talked about. Then came the celebrity responses. Ryan Reynolds tweeted, "Brad just handed out a masterclass on owning your mistakes. Take notes, people." Jennifer Aniston posted on Instagram, "Proud of the growth, proud of the man. Sometimes life comes full circle." Fans lost it over that one. Denzel Washington commented, "The measure of a man isn't in how he falls, but how he rises." Brad nailed it. And then something unexpected happened. A viral TikTok surfaced, posted by an anonymous user, an old friend of Brad's from his early acting days. The video was simple, just a still photo of Brad and the friend decades ago, sitting on the steps of a grimy LA apartment. The caption read, "He was always like this. The guy who helped you when no one else would. Glad the world finally sees it again." The post exploded. People weren't just talking about the interview anymore. They were talking about the entire culture of public shaming, the weird obsession with celebrity scandals, and the deeper question, can people really change? Meanwhile, Elliot Graves wasn't having a great week. The network scrambled to spin the narrative, calling it a raw, unfiltered moment that proved their show fostered real conversations. But no one was buying it. Clips of Elliot's flustered reaction were turned into memes. When your plan backfires mid-broadcast. Brad, 1. Elliot, 0. His credibility took a hit, and while he wasn't canceled, it was clear. His time as a smug gotcha host was running out. And Brad, he didn't tweet about it. He didn't post selfies or ride the media wave. Instead, he was spotted days later at a local community center in Missouri, far from Hollywood, helping with a charity event for at-risk youth. No cameras, no entourage, just Brad. When a reporter finally caught up to him and asked if he had anything to say about the viral interview, he simply shrugged. Sometimes you say what needs to be said, and then you move on. Mech. Drop. In a world obsessed with cancel culture and public shaming, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is own your story, flaws and all. Brad Pitt didn't dodge the questions. He didn't spin the narrative. He did the one thing most people are too scared to do. He was honest. So, what do you think? Can people truly change? Or does the past always follow us? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in stories that challenge narratives and spark real conversations, hit like and subscribe. Because in a world full of noise, we bring you stories that matter.